I don't know, when you were sitting watching people performing and playing and recording for the album, did you feel a bit, oh, I wish that was me a little bit because obviously you did it in the past, or were you really happy to be in other shoes for this album?
I think I was definitely happy to be in other shoes. Since the last record, I've opened my own recording studio and I work as a producer full time. So that's where I'm calling in from, is from my studio, where we made the record. And I am so much more adept at letting other people develop my ideas than I am musically playing those out, because I'm not a great technical musician. So I think I was really overjoyed to let other people run with ideas that I've, had a part in starting, and I definitely don't feel left out from not playing anything. That I couldn't play anything as well as anyone else does.
Like, what was the biggest sort of challenge doing it yourself? Because obviously the last album was done at Abbey Road. What was the biggest challenge that came with doing it yourself this time?
I think that the album we made at Abbey Road was a funny record, in so much as we were sneaking in at night with a friend who had access to use off hours, and it wasn't as nuanced or developed, all the idea making and the creative practice side of things. This album, we hunkered down for. It was made, written and recorded in about a week, in this room, and it was very much about process of spontaneity and working fast, getting excited about ideas and developing them quickly, capturing those ideas and moving on from them. So I think the process was very, very different, and I never enjoyed making a record of my own music, at least, as much as I did as making this album, where we were all together in a room, in sync with each other, working fast and creatively, and being constantly excited by what we were making.
Yeah, and I think just touching on what you mentioned there at the start there, I think from a listener, I mean, I love your older stuff as well, but this just, it feels like it's just more of a reflection. Like, it feels like you're kind of almost enjoying it more, just as from a listener's point of view. It just feels like such a good reflection of what you're about and where you're going. I think that really came across.
That's good. That's good to hear, because I definitely feel it. Like, so few people have heard the record, we're a few days from release day, and I still have this tentative feeling of like, I know that this feels so fresh to me still, even though we wrote it in August last year. But it does still feel fresh, and I hope when people hear it, it sounds fresh, because it was made with that ethos.
It really does sound fresh, and it's like it's gonna be the soundtrack to my spring and summer anyway. It's just such a, like, I feel like it's so uplifting and so fun. I really enjoyed listening to it. And I think the orchestral parts that I mentioned earlier, I think it reminds me, or it reminded me a little bit of Alex G's album Rocket, and then the way that the Beatles used those orchestral instruments as well. Would you say were your biggest musical influences for this record specifically, and has it changed from ones that you've maybe had in the past?
And I think Alex G and the Beatles are both artists who really influenced music in the past and have continued to influence what we're doing now. I think they've influenced our making in different ways in the past. Like the last record, we were obviously massively influenced by the Beatles. And when I was making more DIY lo-fi records as Tugboat Captain, there was that Alex G ethos of, crunchy, skronky DIY sounds. With this album, I think we definitely weren't thinking as much about sonic influences in so much as it was like, what do we sound like as a group when we get together in a room to make music? And what we make is going to inevitably just happen. There's obviously the influences that happen because there's music that we collectively enjoy. And there are things that it does sound like on reflection afterwards. Like, I think the music, I really like that new Black Country New Road record. I love Andy Schauf. In the band, we're all Big Thief fans. And I think all of those things about playing together, it's all about togetherness with like warmth and home and comfort and friends and intimacy, which I think feeds into the sound of what we were making for this album.
No, absolutely. You can definitely hear that. And then, like, community is one of the things that comes across, especially with Thank God, with the sort of really heavy like choral elements. It feels like a warm hug. It's just great. It feels that way.
We managed to squeeze 25 people into this room to
No.
sing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a pretty
quickly.
challenging. It was the last day of recording the album, and I was like pretty emotionally and physically broken from like 7 days of recording. And it was like, okay, we're going to bring the choir in today, and all our friends came in. and did lots of singing. It was a really like special day to have everyone in here doing that.
That sounds so lovely. Speaking of collaboration, if you could collaborate with one artist, living or dead, who would you choose?
I've been thinking a lot about collaborating with Neil Hannon from the Divine Comedy, just because I think he would do some incredible things with the arrangements on our records, make them even bigger than they already are.
I think that would be really cool, amazing. I want to talk now a little bit about some specific songs from the record. Just circling back to the latest single, Thank God, which I love. I think this song just like embodies the perfect hangover of my dreams. Like the sun is shining, I'm with all of my favorite people, it's gonna be a good day, and I think crucially, like there's no fear from the night before, like everything went well, it was a good time. And I think it's just some of the most beautiful writing, particularly that second verse. I love that. I just think that's beautiful, the lyrics from that. How did that track sort of come to be? How did that happen?
That was a funny one because I mean, like so much of the record, it was written, the music was written without lyrics. I kind of knew what I was doing, and we did the instrumentals in the room, and then I would go away in the evenings after like 12-hour recording days and spend the last few hours of the day before getting what little sleep I could get that week writing lyrics for the record. I think with that one, it was one of the last songs we tracked vocals for, and one of the last tracks we recorded for the album. And I think a lot of it was about, for me lyrically, was about trying to write a song that captured, you know, that present, past and future all at once, very quickly, in like lots of different intimate snapshots. And I think it just sort of happened. I think we were just in the room like playing, and I was playing acoustic guitar for that. And we were jamming it out, and we had the chorus. I definitely wrote the chorus while we were like all playing together, and then the verses just sort of happened. I wrote most of it in the shower, I think. And I had to hop out and be like, oh my gosh, I've got to type this out on my phone before I forget.
And I think it feels, definitely for me, I felt like a really strong sense of nostalgia listening to this song. And I don't know if this is too niche or not, but it really reminded me of like that era where like songs like Young Folks were playing on like adverts on TV. And I just feel like it was a very sort of carefree point in my life, and it just really brought me back to that. Like, is that sense of nostalgia and like that warmth, is that something that's like really intentional with your music, or does it just happen naturally?
I think I'm probably a nostalgic person. I like rose-tinted glasses for sure. Yeah, I think there is like a warmth, and that song reflects on so many people in my life. You know, it's about my mum and dad and sister and my school friends and my current friends and my ex-partner and all these different things that like weave through your life, and all these people. It like zooms in and out, and it's definitely reflective. So much of the album is lyrically reflective, and then there's an inevitability of like making music which has lots of wooden acoustic instruments that does just sound warm, old, and makes you think of good times gone.
Yeah, it reminded me of that quote. I can't remember who said it, or who wrote it rather. And that one where it says, "You are a tapestry of everyone that's ever loved you and known you." That one. I think it made me think of that.
That's a nice quote. I like that.
I wish I could remember who wrote it. Typical. You'd find it.
I'll paraphrase when I repeat it.
Yes, please. And the two tracks, Nothing Without You and Keep Me Cool, they have like, one of the first things that really got me was the bass lines for those songs. I feel like they are the vibiest, like funkiest bass lines. Is that something that the track is kind of based around? Like, does that come quite early in the process, or did it just happen later?
I mean, that's always like very early on in the process, because the way we were tracking and recording meant that we were recording, so lots of it was recorded just live in the room as performances. So most of the idea making happened all together while we'd sort of jam out these ideas, and then we'd stick up some microphones and hit record. And then that would be basically the finished product for the songs. None of us were wearing headphones. There was no click track, no guide tracks. It was very much like, let's just roll with it. So the bass lines, I think, the reason they probably feel so fun and groovy and alive is because they happened very spontaneously, with our bassist standing right next to our drummer, feeling out the songs for the very first time as they were being recorded.
And I think it, like, the whole album kind of feels that way. I think the choice to end it with the applause and everything on the last track, I think that was just, it was just the perfect way to end it. I think it really just kind of sums up that whole kind of organic, natural sort of feeling in the process of recording, as you say. It was, yeah, a good choice. I like that one.
We wanted it to feel live. I think that's the big thing. We wanted it to feel like people in a room playing songs together.
Yeah, it definitely comes across that way. Absolutely. There's another track, Keep Me Cool, and that one, I think it kind of, I really like the way it put a positive spin on what we would perceive as these negative sort of feelings, this anxiety. Do you find it more difficult to write those more personal lyrics like that, or does it just sort of come naturally?
I think for a long time I have written songs that are kind of just like letting it all hang out, not being afraid to just like be very expressive. And I think like at the point that we're talking now, the album hasn't come out, and I'm very anxious about sharing this very personal music with the whole world kind of thing. But I think I've always written very personal songs, and it's about my internal space and a collective internal space being externally realized. And I think that's what kind of, in my head, that's what makes it feel like something people can empathize with and feel like is very real. And Keep Me Cool is really a song about like self-doubt and being self-conscious and anxious and having another person help to lift you up. And that's like, you know, those are real feelings. And I think the album is very real for that reason. It's all just like me being like, this is how I feel. This is what's going on in my life right now.
Absolutely. And do you find then in that case, songs like Rufus, was that harder to write, or is that just something that came naturally again? Because obviously that's very different in terms of content.
Yeah, it's the same. I mean, in my head, it's also a love song. It's just a love song about my dog. And you know, I remember writing that. I wrote that, like a version of it, a little bit before we made the record. And it was just a silly little voice note of me singing to my phone about my dog. And then we all got together and we had a go at figuring out how that would be a band song. But that also has a level of just like, this is just really personal and real, and I'm not pretending that it's anything else, and I'm not trying to dress it up as anything more grand than this little story about my dog howling at the moon.
And I think that was another one that really made me nostalgic, because like we were always this, my family was always the same way. We'd make up like little silly songs about our, not saying that your song is silly, of course,
I think it's silly.
we'd always make up little songs about our dogs and everything. And I think it's so nice to kind of have someone to do that properly and like execute it really well. It was really nice. It was really sweet. I liked listening to it.
I think those are some of my favorite songs, when it's like, oh, this should just be some silly little ditty that me and my friends share together. And suddenly it's like being pressed to vinyl, you know, like what happened?
What kind of dog is Rufus?
Rufus is a fox terrier.
Oh, cute.
He's the one on the front cover of the album.
Oh.
He's also very popular on TikTok these days as well.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I'll need to have a look.
Oh, people get very excited about Rufus. It's very funny.
I'll need to go and look. That's what I'm doing after this.
Check it out. Yeah.
Nothing Embarrassing was, I think, probably one of my favorite tracks off of the album. I really loved the octave layered vocals in the chorus. I something about that I just loved. I thought that suited it so well. And again, that lush orchestration. The line, "You buy flowers and I'll buy all the time that I can." I love that. I listened to that like 4 times. I skipped it back and I thought that is so beautiful. Yeah, how did that one come about? What was kind of the inspo behind that one?
I think this record comes at a funny juncture in my life, in so much it was written about a partner who is now my ex, who I was with for a very long time. And that song was about sort of reaching what I think is like the emotional maturity of our relationship, where it's like, these are the very like quiet, boring things that happen in our lives. And, you know, she bought flowers and I'm just trying to fucking get by and survive. But yeah, that whole song is very much inspired by reaching the emotional crest of a relationship.
It was, yeah, I loved it. And I thought, as you say, it kind of puts things that maybe people like me, because I mean I'm a musician, but I'm terrible at writing songs, and I think it kind of puts those sort of mundane things that I would struggle to put into words nicely, and it gives them a voice and a place, and it just, yeah, I loved that. I thought that line like one of my favorite lyrics that I've heard so far. Like I loved it. It was just beautiful. And the Impossible, that one felt a little bit darker than the rest of the record.
Mm.
It reminded me a little bit of the Couple Across the Way by Fontaines DC. It reminded me a bit of that, and it feels like the growing sort of cacophony of all of these sound and instruments and everything. It sounds like what getting overwhelmed feels like. Is that kind of what you were going for with that song?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it is about that sort of overwhelming feeling of. It's about acknowledging how absurd being in love with someone really is. Like how insane those emotions are, and how complex and diverse that feeling is. And one of the fun things about that track is we recorded that as an improvised performance. It was very much like we have a start point and an end point. We're going to play the song in the room, and we don't really know what's going to happen in the middle. So it's very much an improvised song that's then bulked out by we had our choir come in, and they just speak quietly over the track until it rises up into a big crescendo. But yeah, it's definitely a darker song, and it's definitely a more emotionally intense moment on the record, I think.
Yeah, that was literally gonna be my next words. I was gonna say that it must have felt, recording it, more emotional and intense, actually being there and having it kind of come about as this live organic thing. That must have been really intense.
Yeah, it's a very. I still feel a very powerful feeling. Like we do this song as part of our live set as well, and still run it as an improvised track where it's like we have a start point and an end point, and whatever happens in between happens. And I think, I mean, the live set for certain, it's the moment where I push my voice to the absolute limit of what it's capable of. And I think musically, we are all taking things to another place in terms of the absolute like power and intensity of what a song can be.
Would you do more songs like that in the future, where it's kind of different every time that you play it, and that kind of organic thing? Is that something that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, it's very exciting, and there is this like tangible feeling of like, wow, what the hell is going to happen next? And in the past with Tugboat Captain, songs have evolved massively over time in terms of how they're performed live. I get very excited by the idea that songs live in flux, that the songs that we make when we record them are one thing, and then they change, and then we could, if we really wanted to, record them a few years later and they would be different songs. And that's like, songs shouldn't ever stop developing, which is why it's okay to record them at the start as well as it is when they're further down the line of development, because they're always in different places and always mean different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was doing another interview last week with a girl called Ali San, and she was saying that one of the things that she looks forward to about doing her live shows is that, I mean, like, unlike you guys, she's like a solo artist, and she then gets different players every night, like based on wherever she's going, and like every time it's like, as you say, it's something different, something new happens, and it adds to like a different flavor to the track.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of thing, you can learn so much about your songs by bringing new minds into it. It's such an exciting way to like stimulate the songwriting process.
Absolutely. My last two tracks that I want to talk about, and I've been looking forward to talk about these ones and getting into it.
Okay.
Board and Pest Control is obviously commenting more at the social, political, and economic crisis, I guess, that we're living in now. How important is it for you, do you feel, to write about these things? Because I know that there are obviously other artists out there that kind of try to stay out of that and write about other things. Is that something that's important to you?
I think, like I said earlier, like these songs are such like a real personal snapshot, and in the music, in those songs, which do obviously feel like they're a little bit more directed towards like a contemporary political and cultural climate, I think what's really happening in those is, I'm just talking about how I'm feeling. I'm never going into it being like, I'm gonna write a song about the state of the nation, but they are just about like how difficult it is to like stay afloat living in London, and how hard it is to find a house that's not filled with rats and mold. and how being a musician is financially next to impossible. Those are just real things that have happened to me, and I think are happening to a lot of people and a lot of my friends at least. So it's an inevitable commentary on what's going on because it's what's going on to me. And you know, this record is about like just life, things that happen in all of our lives.
Yeah, it's certainly very relatable. And I mean, I wanted to get this straight because I wasn't sure if I got the correct meaning for this, and I've been meaning to ask this. So pest
Oh,
control, when I listened to this, I kind of got that. And as I said, I didn't have like so much time to really get into these things. But to me, I kind of got that we are like the average sort of working person is like the pest being controlled by like the powers that be. Did I understand that correct?
you know, I like that reading. I think so.
So it's wrong.
I take no umbrage with that reading. So I wrote that song specifically for a friend who was really having a bad time because they were taking on so many of the worries of the world. You know, at a time where like it does really feel like impending economic and political and environmental collapse is just on our door. I wrote that song as a way of being like, you know, don't let the world win. Don't let it get you. Like things suck for everyone. It's like, you know, even the anxious accountant or the world weary teacher or the preacher, I can't remember even my own lyrics. But like for me that song's about how we are all humbled by having pests to deal with. Like no matter what happens, it's like, okay, there are these awful things going on, there are these nightmarish situations, but all of us just like end up having rats. It happens.
It happens.
It happens. I mean, it literally recently happened to me. There were rats in my basement, and it's like these things do just happen to people. And I think that's for me what that song's about. But I'm so glad you found some other meaning in it. That's brilliant too. And I think the lyrics on that are also like vague to a point where I think you could interpret them however you want to.
It's really nice to actually hear kind of where it came from. That's really interesting, and I think, yeah, like it did, even though I kind of got a different meaning from it, it's still one of the songs that's like universally sort of relatable with lyrics. And I think one of the other lyrics in Bored, I think of all the holidays I can't afford. That, I mean, that has to be the most relatable lyric of 2025. Like everyone's thinking,
really,
absolutely.
I need a holiday so bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think like when you're writing is that degree of relatability something that you are conscious of when you're writing, or does that kind of, because as you say, obviously it's a very personal, they just come from a personal perspective and what you're feeling. Is it something that then you only realize after when you speak to other people that say, oh, this was so relatable, I'm also feeling this way?
I guess I kind of just assume that I'm not that special. And the things that I'm saying and experiencing, like I'm not particularly unique or like doing anything crazy with my life or coming from a crazy place with things. I'm just like another person living their lives, getting on with it. And I kind of assume that by writing lyrics about that experience, I'm just one of many people having that experience, and other people will then, you know, interpret that how they want. I definitely don't think, oh, how am I going to make something relatable? Because I think if I were to do that, it would just be, I mean, it'd be so insincere, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It just, you know, that's when things end up sounding like everything else.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we finish up, I'd love to talk about the tour, obviously, that's upcoming. So it's the first time that you've been on the road since 2021, is that right?
Yeah, it's the first in the UK. It's the first time we've done a big run of UK shows since 2021. Yeah, I'm daunted and somewhat excited.
Yeah, because I think, yeah, when it's going back to these places that you haven't been in a few years, it must be a little bit nerve-wracking. What thing are you most looking forward to about it?
I'm really excited just to like workshop this live show because we've played it out so few times. We've only done, I reckon, 4 shows with this new set, with basically a new band as well. Like we're a slightly different lineup from how we've toured in the past and played live. we all also just play so much more music together. Like since that last tour, all of us have basically become professional musicians in some capacity. You know, we're producers or engineers or musicians and session musicians. So it's a very different way of approaching playing shows now, where I think we're just a lot better at music, which is cool. I feel like there's been some tangible improvement in our skills.
It's always good.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope so after like what is it, 4 years off the road in the UK. I'm excited. It's a funny one. Like we've had the good fortune of getting to play quite a lot of shows outside of the UK, and the UK is definitely a harder climate to tour, and just preparing for that, like preparing for the eventuality that realistically touring in the UK is a financial hole, compared to us going abroad and playing shows. It's a very different way to think about how we're doing it, and it's different when you're like in Europe having a crazy time compared to like grabbing a Greg's on the motorway. There's not the same glamour realistically.
I can totally see that. Absolutely. What was like a highlight for you touring in Europe?
We had amazing. In March, we did 3 weeks in Italy, which was just incredible. We did a lot of shows. We drove all the way down, made it all the way to Sicily and back again. And honestly, just like getting to do an adventure with your friends like that is like unforgettable experience. And really the reason why we do the band, like, you know, this kind of music, I assume is never going to reach huge audiences, and it's never going to make me enough money to live off. But we keep on doing it because we get to do experiences like that. So just like getting to be together in a foreign place, like all the holidays I can't afford, I can compensate for by a sort of working holiday where I have to play shows somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Oh, Italy's gorgeous. That must have been so much fun.
It was amazing.
What will 3 like essential road trip tracks be for your tour coming up? What are you going to be listening to?
Essential road trip tracks. I guess we're probably doing Willie Nelson on the road again because it has been a while.
Classic.
I don't know. I don't have any tracks. My brain doesn't. I have this thing where people ask me like, "Oh, what have you been listening to lately?" And all I can think of is just like silly children's music that I like. It'll probably be Elvis. I listen to a lot of Elvis at the moment.
Love.
Just because it's fun. I love Elvis. We'll be listening to Suspicious Minds, I guess, is probably just on repeat. Suspicious Minds times 3.
Amazing. That's a good road trip song though. A good choice.
Yeah.
And is there, just before we finish up, is there anything you'd like to add or, you know, I suppose promote before we call it a day for today?
Oh, just whoever is watching this, please buy a copy of the record, because self-releasing and running a small cottage industry of being a musician is very difficult. So buy a record. That's all I'd say.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll definitely be at one of the London shows. I can't decide whether I'm going to the Friday or the Saturday one, but I'll definitely be there.
I'm very excited. Those London shows, they're going to be really special.
I'm so excited. Amazing, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for this afternoon. It's been great.
Oh, Molly, thank you so much. Those were such lovely questions as well. I really appreciate the in-depth analysis. It's such a treat for me to talk about.
Oh, thank you so much. That's great. That's so nice to hear.
Nice one. Hopefully meet you in person at one of the London shows.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you too. Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much.
Great afternoon. Thank you. Cheers for your time. Bye.
Thank God, it's a beautiful morning.